Morihei Ueshiba.
All right, good. We'll just loosen out a bit here. We'll just play with a similar one as yesterday. Just play a little bit more with making the weight a little bit more to one leg. You can see this as a kind of maybe with a skip side to side, maybe a little bit, maybe front and back, or we could add in a little bit of a rotation at the hips. Just go kind of a little bit up and down the joint for the arms. Just think about the wrists. Just think about kind of releasing out through the wrist. It seems like same side. You can release out that way. You could release across the body. And then just so you can kind of take it to the elbows. If you've got two kind of movement to the elbow or one, just a hinge movement. A little bit with the release. Down. So play maybe like a swing, let the arms go. Just playing a little bit into the shoulders as well, so allow the shoulders kind of roll, come up and down, opening front and back. So then whole joint system roll. Oh, into it. Okay. Oh, there we go. And then keep like going, just play with it coming across the chest. Allow the arms to or the hands to travel around a little bit. So sometimes top the shoulder, around the back, beneath the armpits. And start to add in with this one, maybe a little bit more rotation, not too much, but maybe the idea to just slightly whip the arm to the body. The nice one will be just working one side, letting the other hand kind of rest on a point of the body. One good place would be like the center and just kind of getting a sense of the center kind of leading that motion. You could also put it on the back, near the tailbone. You can just get a feel for the movement, maybe coming a little bit more from that area of the body. If you feel maybe the shoulders stiff on one side, you could also kind of use that hand just to kind of check in with the shoulder, particularly the front of the shoulder, the top, or maybe also like the side of the neck. So if you notice the getting things like tension come into the body. And then just going down with it. So just same kind of thing, just release out. You could start with the same kind of movements, releasing the wrists out, releasing the elbows, releasing the shoulders. If you feel good with it, just start to release out. And now think about really, with the shoulders, the arms release, think about releasing the head as much as possible. So allow the head to kind of drain down. Think about just the weight of the head, lengthening the spine. Obviously take it as far as you're kind of comfortable with it. And again, playing with things like taking the weight side to side, or maybe taking up the foot a little bit, going out of the ground. And just trying to feel the weight of the arms, feel the length through the spine with the weight of the head. Nice. You just want to kind of catch a little bit, catch your movement, follow it a little bit. You might, the movement might switch, change, just follow it. Notice the breath as well as you're doing it. If you need to come up a little bit or come up totally. So. Great. And then just playing with one motion, in this case, going into a swing, front and back, and just play with the key joint, and this one would be like the knees, because the tendency would be to kind of load the knee, and then the arms kind of take over. So just allow the knees to soften. So you get a movement through the foot and through the knee. And you could exaggerate this by really sending the weight back to the heel, and kind of lengthen through the knee. And then you could also potentially go forward onto the toes, to let the weight settle. So just think about kind of lightly playing with rolling through the feet. But the key joint in this case again is kind of the knee, and just the ability to just soften it through while it's taking weight. Just catch your movement, and then nice simple one, just allow yourself to start to draw up. So kind of float the movement up and then back down. So use this movement as a kind of, and just to kind of catch the weight of the body. Check in with the knee, and then as the knee feels released, just allow yourself to just press up a bit into the ground. You can think of this two ways. In a way, it's like two ways of operating. If you're doing one or the other, you just slightly change it. One's the feeling of pushing the body up from the ground, and one would be like the feeling of pushing the ground away. So like a kind of launch off. So in a way where you would like think about jumping out of the ground, and I'm thinking more obviously what it looks like or what it feels like is obviously the body being pushed from the ground. But think about in terms of feeling, I'm going to kind of push the ground away with the feet. So you can just kind of push the ground away. If the body's just kind of heavy, obviously it's not going to go anywhere. And maybe you don't do anything to the ground either. But getting more kind of feeling level of just allowing that to happen. And then just play with the movement. I think of this like when you're on the top of a roller coaster, you jump up and you're right at the top and then let it go. So it's that one because you want to feel the weight of the movement. There's still movement happening, but it looks maybe like a kind of static hold. But play with the sensation. It's like the arms are very loosely held and then drop. So you can play with that like at the front of the body maybe. If you're really able to open up the shoulder, maybe just feel a kind of like a kind of subtle lengthening through the system, but particularly looking at the shoulder. And just this moment where the body's kind of fully lengthened up, and then let it go. And just looking for it like a natural tractioning through the joint system, really. Okay, good. And then in terms of this movement, what we tend to think about also one of the ideas will be like kind of pulling the movement from the ground and passing it up to the hand. That is happening obviously because the movement wants to kind of pass up. But think about that the ground still stays the kind of primary focus, and then the movement's going to come from the ground as well. So if you think about both parts of those movements, So it's not so much that I'm kind of throwing the arm up and pushing it down this way, but it will be maybe something more like the ground contact stays as a kind of primary focus for the movement. The tricky part of that obviously is when the hands are out and away, but if I think of just maintaining that contact to the ground, and actually the more I'm kind of lengthening up to the hand, the more naturally you're going to kind of sink down. If you imagine like hanging off a bar again, you would talked like this today, I think. Just imagine the weight of the body, and again, just draining down to the ground. Yeah, it's so nice. Yeah, really simple exercise, but lots of things you can work with just to change the exercise a little bit. And then just play with maybe a little bit of a shorter movement. And again, particularly with this one, just looking at the joint system of the arm and obviously the knees again. So think about as lightly as I can kind of hold the body. A little bit like a kind of, think about a kind of marionette. Kind of like the hands being drawn up. Now, if the weight's kind of not loaded in the top of the joint system, like here, for example, then you won't get this kind of heavy feeling or stiff feeling in the body. And think about the same thing with the knees as well. It's a little bit, think about kind of being pulled and pushed, maybe with the knee. And the key thing is to just kind of preserve that flexibility for the joint system as well. Hey, buddy, thanks a lot. Nice and short. Okay, good. So particularly now, just maybe look at the wrist, the fingers again, just try and let them soften. And again, just it's basically it's just a kind of allowing gravity to act through the joint system. So again, where these go is usually if I do them fast and maybe not so much tension on the movement, and the arm kind of carries itself from the top of the joint. The idea once I can get out is maybe that I'm starting to work in the joint system itself. So maybe it starts to go like this. And the one I really want to get to in terms of feeling would be like the weight is falling off the arm. So it's like all the attention goes really below the joint and out of the arm basically, and somewhere on the underside of the joint. And the same would be like in the leg as well. Noticing if I'm potentially holding the leg from the front, like in the hip flexor and the knees, something like that. So on the kind of surface level, if I can get a little bit deeper, maybe into the joint. And then potentially the feeling again is like draining out from the leg. Legs tend to be a bit tricky because obviously they're maintaining weight. But the feeling in the legs will be like draining down, obviously, with this one in terms of weight. Because a lot of us tend to be quite stiff in the hip, particularly the front of the hip, this area. It's also worthwhile really just kind of balance out the back and kind of release the back. So being aware of the backside of the leg, backside of the knee tends to be quite an area I'm not so much aware of unless I get kind of injury in the knee. And sole of the foot, the underside of the toes, all those kind of areas. Tend to be quite aware of the feet, but there we go. That's easy. Good. Cool. And then just play with bringing in a rotation. So again, that key thing now is as you go out, just keep that sensation. So if you notice the body starts to go into these kind of patterns, and that'll come across usually as kind of tension in the top of the joint, particularly in the shoulder here. So you might want to play with, again, just using the other hand just to kind of feel what's really happening there. Obviously, once I've got the feeling that it's there, you can obviously drop the hand away. You can bring in both. But if you just feel what's happening in the joint, and then keeping that feeling of a contact with the ground, halfway from the ground. Think about maybe just choosing one leg and drop into it. You can do this exercise in a few ways. And in terms of weight, you could shift the weight to one side and do it. You could shift it to the other side and do it. So just play around with it a little bit. Some people will teach this in a very specific way in terms of there's one way to do it, and there's there is a way which would make maybe sense, logical sense with it, but not always so logical, and things don't always make total sense. So I would just play with maybe shifting the weight. What you can also do is, what I would also start to do is maybe start to open the hip with it. So if you're thinking specifically about kind of handing work or Aikido postures, maybe think about stuff going to that. And then the key thing again is let the foot be moved by the rest of the body. So a clear ground contact with one leg, and then allow the other leg to kind of just swing open. So leg just open in the draw. What you'll probably notice if you do this exercise and then you do the rotation, open up the leg, and you try and lift the leg at the same time, it's pretty tricky actually to kind of do in a very relaxed way. There's a lot of Tai Chi sets will start with a kind of step out or a walk out. Things that tend to get kind of missed in terms of movement, which is like how difficult very basic movements are, like picking the leg up. And particularly if I'm looking to do it with less effort or little effort as possible. Very nice. And as you're doing that, just notice that particularly again, what tends to happen is that all the focus goes a little bit to this hand going around, and then the back hand becomes kind of doing its own thing because it kind of disappears behind. Think about as you're doing it, just feel what happens when you do this movement, and really make a clear contact with the body on the back as well. So it doesn't really matter where it goes, but it's just in a sense the same way you would do with the Bokken and the first of the reef, like just touching the spine, just making a light tap on the back of the body, and just maybe brings a bit more awareness to the whole back side of the body. And similar to the kind of karate movement, although that kind of back pull of the hand with the ski, just brings a kind of more sense of balance to the body maybe. Most in the end, it's just about knowing where the joint system is in space, and actually it's going to come through in sensation of the body. So thinking where it is in space and feeling where it is in space, two different things, obviously, tend to get mixed and mingled. And then with that, keep all that work going. Maybe think about kind of introducing a little bit more freedom in the feet, and then think about maybe bringing that swing back in. So that swing is going to kind of be, you could do a very simple one, like a forward and backward swing with the leg. It would be a very simple one, not so simple, but simpler than the others. And then you could start to bring in a bit of rotation work with it. Again, you could do this like one-sided, and maybe use the other hand just to kind of check in with bits of the body. Tailbone. Maybe the sternum is also a good one to look at. Back of the neck, back of the head. You can just feel where all the limbs are in space, or all the pieces are. Try and bring them together. Okay. And then you might start to find like figure of eight patterns coming in. So think about maybe like a continuous motion now that doesn't really stop. And again, you could do a very simple pattern front and back. Again, just get the feeling that it doesn't really have a beginning or end to the movement, just let it go. And then, again, it's just maybe this idea that you catch your movement and then let it change somewhere else. Just keep the body kind of moving freely. Like a kind of, it's sort of like if you think about the initial movement, like a kind of drop of a stone in a pond, then you got all the ripples out, and maybe the movement starts to slow, become less, or like an echo, the original movement, or you might pick it up again. So maybe sometimes, every once in a while, just allows us kind of let the movement kind of complete, and let the body just come to neutral every once in a while. And again, notice how tricky it is if I'm kind of operating on a level of a little bit less effort, or a lot less effort, then maybe it's quite difficult to get the movement to go. Again, if I'm not really carrying the arms or carrying the head through the space, then it's And again, a little bit different feeling of the body. And the other way you could do this is just with like a light weight in the hand or carrying. Got a few points at the moment. Obviously, the heavier the weight, the harder it's going to be to not get tension in the body. Play with very simple weight and just kind of pass it around. Depends on how much you want to, how much feedback you want. Nice. That's it. Great. Very good. And then just go to the same exercise again, just to kind of open up the legs a little bit, so make it a little bit wider. Just exploring the legs a little bit, but again, notice kind of things like tension in the legs. So a simple one will be like, again, just to kind of drop in and then going out to the side. Think about a lot of the stretching exercises, kind of side to side movements, loading one side. You feel very flexible. So it's going to more squat positions, more lunge positions. But again, just doing it kind of in a light way, trying to maintain a sense of fluidity through the body. And I just think about, in this case, would be like weaving through the hips, weaving the motion through the hips, and it's just like maybe a bit more of a challenging motion. But again, no way just to kind of wake up the legs a little bit. And you could think about tracing lines on the ground with the fingers. Take a little bit more weight into the hands. Just play a little bit with. And if the hands are taking a little bit more weight, maybe the legs can start to again play with, freeing up a little bit. It's been a tricky joint to release, kind of hips tend to be tricky to release in general. The other one, if you don't want to go totally down again, would be just maybe just playing, exploring with one leg. And obviously you've got the focus tends to go to the leg in the ground because it's stabilizing. It takes a lot of attention to kind of balance the body, obviously. But as you're doing it, just maybe notice what the other leg can kind of do with it. So again, the more free the joint, the more range of motion maybe, the more possibilities with it. But again, just slightly kind of split the focus with this one would be like, you've got a heavy leg, you've got a light leg. The light leg's very free to move around, and the heavy leg needs to stabilize and take the weight of the body. So you probably start to feel the arms want to move around anyway. That's fine, just follow them. You could think about kind of counterbalancing with the body, or you could just think about finding a shape. And just letting the arms kind of free as well. Make these as hard and difficult as you like. You think about, again, really basic actions like stepping over, kicking. The other one that's a nice image, you know, those when in the heist movies where they go through the laser room where they're trying to steal the precious Ming vase or something, and I think about kind of going through the laser field, going through the body this way, and again kind of dragging the body through, and again kind of doing it in a very controlled way, very light. And the more knowledge I have of the body, or the more feeling I have of the body in space, the less you're going to kind of climb the laser beam, set off the security. So, but it is just one exercise you can do this, but it also gives direction to the body. You can really start to play with in very clear direction for the body. It's one of those. It's one of the not the traps in terms of in this kind of work, but there's the feedback can be less. Obviously, the feedback is in your own body, but sometimes nice to have like a little bit of external feedback. The other thing you could do is actually like put objects around the space, maybe, and again just kind of play with navigating around them. You could do also ice kind of clothes with it. You could do with the lights off, so you could, if you want to, if you've got things in the space. Move around, and just different ways to challenge the body, bring awareness to the body a little bit. Great. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, good use of time. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Great. Also that. You also do that. That's good. Okay. We'll go to one down. So you could do this with Bokken, Joe, or whatever, but do it with other objects as well. So I've got kind of flip flop. I'm just going to kind of go and pick it up and look around. The lighter the kind of object is, the better. Maybe just work around again. Just maybe move it around and then place it back, or put it somewhere else, and then just go to another object. So just move around the space, kind of picking up which objects. You've probably got lots of weapons around fighting, so just kind of maybe pick things up, move it around. You could place it around in different areas. And you could start to create a little obstacle course for myself. And just be mindful of all the objects you can bring in. So you can kind of do the same thing moving around the space. And just notice different kind of qualities, obviously, with the objects, different weights, different textures. And you just continue all that kind of mobilizing. So we tend to go then like external to the object, and all the attention goes there. Obviously, happens, but try and keep all the kind of body work as well, and that kind of free exploration of the body. And particularly again, noticing that the kind of transition point where you reach for the object or place the object down. So everything in that case is in the transition of the object. And stuff we do with the Bokken, like in terms of extending, feeling out, connecting in. Very simple stuff. And the stuff that you do all day anyway. So just maybe exploring it a little bit more playfully. And then once you kind of maybe got a few objects in space, start to kind of move around a little bit more. So picking them up, placing them again in other places. Helps to have maybe some fragile objects or maybe some softer object. Yeah, good, great. You could do this a few ways. You could think also about the function of the object, whatever it is. What it does, this one, the water does this, it does this. Yeah, good. Good. This is the Jackie Chan exercise. If you go Jackie Chan movies, he just picks up anything and uses it as a weapon in the fight, whatever it is. What's that game? Fire. Okay. Very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Eddie.
Right. Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Good. All right. Let's just do the same with Bokken. So if you grab a Bokken. Obviously, the first thing would be like going into it and treating it as a weapon. Just play with actually as it is, like a kind of stick, bit of a shaved pointy end to it, bit of a spine to it. But just play with and kind of moving around the body a little bit like you would treat it like a Joe, maybe with these kind of exercises maybe start to come up. But just think about kind of passing around the body and noticing things like weight through the joint system and trying to go back to this kind of area exercise as well, things like swinging, passing, and just checking with the joint system again with the weight of the Bokken. And just kind of treating it like a stick. Play around with that. Obviously, probably longer than most of the objects you're kind of working with before. So just think about, again, think about the length, think about how far I actually feel into the Bokken. You could play with any grip, you could take it on the opposite end. A little bit heavier, maybe feels grips a little bit thinner. Just kind of work your way into it. Do one hand, work in the middle of the Bokken, twiddle it around the fingers maybe a little bit. Just explore a little bit. Around the back, pressing around the head, pressing around the shoulder. Where is it? Where's that? Press it through the legs. Leg. Good. Yeah, good. Great. Great. We'll do these in a kind of specific sword works. There are some specific ones, but just play with the next one, which will be like just placing it down. Again, there's many ways you could do it. You could kind of place it down this way. You could maybe slide across the ground a little bit. Joe, you can obviously treat it like a sword, and we'll do that one. Again, really important part of training. Obviously, a lot of attention goes to that, especially if you go to things like weapons taking. But just think of it as like a kind of stick. And again, I'm going to place it down. Treat it like a very precious stick, obviously, or a really good stick you find in the park. I want to treat it well. Don't throw it down and break it. I want to keep it nice there, and just place it down and just play with it with different patterns. You do it. Notice one thing that kind of comes up mainly, obviously, when you treat it like a sword is what's happening with the head and your attention as you're doing it. So I maybe later need to kind of split the attention in terms of what I'm doing. So the idea then will be like maybe looking out at one point and placing the weapon down carefully. Later, obviously, that comes up if I've got a partner, obviously. That's where you see a lot of the kind of training in terms of etiquette or the kind of lead up to forms. You see a lot in particularly some of the older sword schools, weapon schools in Japan. A very long, kind of drawn out etiquette ritual to go into the partner practice, which is probably a very short 10 seconds or something, and then they go back out. Great. All right, and then do the same thing. Just play now. Really treat it obviously like a Bokken, and then just play with again the joint system free. You can notice that the immediate tendency is to go into a pattern which is very tight in the front of the body. So just play with maybe softening it, and maybe it's just an exploration of like Bokken a little bit closer, Bokken a little bit further away, and just finding the point where it feels kind of comfortable in the body. Just you got basic Judan Kamai, Seigan Kamai, and you also got different kind of movements up, but just kind of feel your way into them. And do it as a kind of in a light way, where I'm not kind of encouraging stiffness and tightness particularly in the front of the body now with the weight of the Bokken. So again, goes back to this. If you think about why this pattern's so good, or why this Kamai is so stressed a lot, but because the feeling of draining down below the Bokken's really very clear in this one, if I kind of allow it. So it tends to get lost a little bit as I go up, or down is obviously again tends to go into collapse. So this kind of balance of the Bokken here really promote this feel. If I can access this feeling of the body, maybe get into the joint system freer, and then maybe get the feeling below kind of draining off. So I think about maybe just shaking water off the Bokken a little bit, shaking water off the limbs. And it's just to get this kind of, again, this promoting this feeling of like heaviness through the joint system. And at the same time, you're also taking or moving feeling into the Bokken itself. And again, that's going to depend on the quality of the grip, how much feeling I can pass through it. I think Saito said this phrase with like it was like having a noisy Kamai. And it's something you would notice, like if somebody kind of faces you with the sword and you feel like it's full, like there's a kind of full feeling with the person. like the Bokken, the kind of noise, like the Kamai is kind of noisy in a sense. It's kind of broad. You obviously have the opposite of that one, which would maybe like a very quiet Kamai, which would be maybe more on a calm level. Right. And then with that, just start to explore different Kamais with it. So again, maybe very light ones will be like, or very formal ones will be like more down position to get in Kamai. Obviously, Jodan Kamai coming up. Just take your time in each of them, transfer between them. You also got things like Hasso Kamai with the sword, maybe in this kind of area. And again, you just want to be comfortable. Particularly these ones, I want to watch out for the elbows. The classic one you see in people do this one, they do this one, and then they hold this kind of position or something like this, and you basically just try and hold that for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. You probably notice a lot of stiffness starts to be introduced into the body. So just play with, again, a kind of feeling of softness through the body, and try and anchor it into the back, basically. So the more the sword is challenging the body in terms of its weight, and the more it's going to need to be anchored into the body. Back positions as well, like you come like to the back side of the body. You could do any number of Kamai really. There's kind of 5 basic ones you'll tend to see in sword work, and then any kind of variations of them. And some people would whittle them down to 3. Some people would say there's just 1. The correct answer is there's no Kamai. There is no God. That would be the last one. And again, notice a similar thing we did with the object. Think about the transitions now. So there's obviously the position where you're in, and there's how you get to the next one. So just really fully be aware then as you kind of transfer. And if it's like taking the hands off or kind of taking one hand off, just really feel that kind of transition. And start to again kind of split your focus a little bit so that you've got a very clear focus out from the body, and letting the eyes kind of rest onto an object. And then you've got everything that's happening in the body and below the body and behind the body, obviously. But it's just in a sense as if I was kind of working with a partner, in the sense that I've got a kind of external focus, working with the different kamais, and you could feel it kind of stalking around a little bit, maybe with the feet. Maybe the sensation is like splitting focus at the beginning. Like I'm trying to do 2 things, but obviously later just see it as one thing, and the kind of interaction between those 2 things. You could obviously think about concealing the weapon. Would be a little bit tricky with the sword, but obviously things like you might go into this kind of idea, maybe concealing the blade, or at least concealing the length of the blade. So kind of trying to position it in the eyes where the blade length is kind of hidden. Maybe it goes back to a time in Japan where all the swords were not equal and even. So we tend to have a 1 standard length now, but this actually there'd be a lot of variations in terms of blade length. So maybe this kamai goes to an idea of maybe hiding the sword, or maybe just hiding the length of the blade to the person that's seeing it. So just kind of follow something like that. Yeah, very good. Great. And then with that, just play maybe with, going back to this earlier one, which would be like placing the sword down on the ground. Now again, there's many ways you could do this. There's a couple of really formal ways to do it, but just do it with an awareness. Like again, it is a weapon, and I'm kind of treating it carefully. And I'm also going to pick it up in a way where I'm treating it carefully, so obviously not going down to the blade edge in terms of the Bokken, but picking it up again carefully. Maybe coming back into a kamai, maybe switching kamai. And then you could play with different ways to put the sword down. You could treat it as if it's in a scabbard and put it down. Just doing it now really with a focus, kind of again a very external focus. And the focus definitely doesn't go to kind of looking at the sword down, which will basically, if you think about in an interaction, it will be like exposing the back of the neck and the body and the back maybe to the person. So if you think about, again, just an awareness of the position of the body in space as you're placing the weapon down. Maybe it's just very simple. What I would do is also play with stepping away from it as well, and being still aware of where the Bokken is in space. Going back to it. Keeping the focus out on the body. This is a really nice one to do in like low light level, in the dark, or moonlight would be the best one. That's always the best one to do this in, outside, moonlight. Where all the best sword stories come from as well. Right. Good. That's it. Good. That's it. Great. And then we'll just take a little bit of first degree. So just coming back to a kind of a neutral posture. Again, just allow yourself to settle into the feet a little bit, kind of neutral with the body. Swords on the left side, and then just take your time coming in. If you feel like you want to come back into that position when you like, just starting to take into the first degree. A nice clean form. Again, keep a sense of a kind of external focus out. So it might just be a point of focus, or it might be something like a door frame. Helpful now with obviously with aligning the movement too. And again, if you feel like you kind of lose focus or lose contact, just come back into a more of a neutral position. Take your time. Yes. Right. Let's just go back to one exercise and play with the form in this case. So if you think about the swinging exercise we did, kind of neutral, and again, just looking for this point where the arms will kind of float above the body and then be kind of drawn down. Look for this with the tendency with this form is, again, it kind of promotes stiffness in some cases. The shoulder's very tight, goes into this kind of pattern. You get this kind of position, and then it's really difficult to not start with the arms in this case because the arms are tensioned already or tense, and then they're going to kind of go in. So think about in this case, maybe it's more opening the underside of the arm and the armpit and the elbow. Obviously, you can take that to its extreme also, which will distort the spine. Don't go that far. Keep this kind of neutral feeling. Feel the base, the pommel side of the sword, and feel that kind of lengthening up, and then think about just taking it down. And again, play within this form. So you could do it lightly in this kind of way, or you could fully reach the back and go in. But there is obviously a split in this movement. But if you think about the first degree, it's really just one movement. Although we tend to split it up in terms of Kihon training and just playing with feeling, obviously, but we'll tend to split up the movement into two. 1, 2. But think of it even when you're doing it in that sense, or any kind of transition, really think of it as just one thing in a sense. And just play with trying to find that feeling. What you're essentially doing in this case is like just allowing the sword to kind of go into this kind of arc. And you're obviously behind it and maybe controlling it obviously a little bit. But you just want to kind of catch that kind of feeling with the sword, so it's as if it's just tipping over. And the more I'm kind of aligned behind that movement, the easier it's going to be. Basically allowing the sword to fall to the ground, obviously. And then if you put in a little bit of structure behind it, maybe it becomes more of a strike percussion. So you've got the two hands on the weapon, you're kind of creating fulcrum leverage, and all that kind of stuff is happening in a very light way, not in such a kind of obvious way in terms of pulling, pushing, that kind of stuff. Again, possible in terms of just kind of aligning with the movement, or that the intention of the movement. Something a little bit lighter, maybe. Great. And then what I want to it's just an idea with this, which is it's something that comes out of practice, particularly like this, that tends to get repetitious. So particularly a lot of first degree work, a lot of it, and the actual form itself, the way we practice it, it's like I'm doing like 1, 2, 3. I remember when we did the New Year's Day thing, we did like 1,000 Suburi, and that was in this kind of level, like repetition, just to do sets of moves. So you could treat it that way, but really see this in this case like it's just one cut, and think of it as like every time it's going to be like the first cut I do with the sword. So think the first time you kind of pick the sword up from wherever you keep it, have that sensation of it, and then cut with that feeling. And then each time we just want the way to kind of get back into that is maybe just pull the body back out into command. Maybe it means kind of going back into kind of moving around a little bit, but just feel every time you kind of switch on. Cut, really allow the cut to finish, let it kind of settle into the body, and then don't think about doing another, just maybe come back out of it. So if you're doing it in this way, you can do the repetitious form, and you can do it to a count or whatever's kind of class maybe. But I want to kind of maybe feel that it's every time like the first time I'm kind of cutting with the sword. And then again, it's on the level of like noticing things. I might notice a different feeling each time, or I might play with a different feeling each time. So that then becomes a possibility rather than just I'm kind of performing a repetitious action over and over and over and over. This is like mechanical view of training, which is maybe useful sometimes. Yeah, good. And then the other way you could look at it to get out of that is also you could think of it as like it's going to be the last cut I do. So I could think about every one being the final cut that I'm going to do with it. So this, and then it just kind of ends. So this is like the feeling you have if you, in terms of partner practice. I'm not doing a cut where it's kind of repetitious. I'm doing a cut where it's finishing the form totally. Yeah, and it's done in that sense. So think of in this case, again, same form, obviously just changing the feeling of it. I want to feel like there's nothing else to happen actually. So it's just done and over. So in that case, there's no next cut in this case. It would just be one cut, one and done. And you could take that as far as you want in terms of last cut. There's also another way of looking at things in terms of in terms of this. You could say it may be the last cut you ever make. It might just be true. It might be the last time I ever do the first Subaru with the Bokken. And maybe, yeah, exactly. I mean, it happens. So make it a good one. I'm going to put it on my tombstone. Really good first Subaru. How did he die? Well, imagine me, I never do that ever again. I just like forget about the Aikido thing. It's like it's like if you do anything like fishing or whatever, it's like the last catch, or there'll be a last. There's always going to be a last one. So if you don't want, you definitely don't want to. Most people say like don't end on a bad one. Like you definitely. That's why most people never stop because they keep going. I'll just get a good one. That's what I do. I'm supposed to do. My idea would be to pick up the sword in the morning, do one cut, perfect, go back to bed, go have another coffee.
You'll wake up again.
Yeah, it never happens. Just doesn't happen. Maybe once in a while. Not this week. And this training can also go to like, there's also like long repetitious training. And I'm a bit of a fan of like long training in that sense, like doing the first subruta 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, and then feel what happens to the body and see what starts to come up. So you'll probably start to get like things like tensioning in the ankles and the knees, and then you start to get maybe more tense as you do it. So again, and that's just feedback in terms of the exercise, talking to the body. There's also, you don't probably want to be doing it like anything. You don't want to be sitting for an hour. You don't want to be doing anything really repetitious in that sense. So there's uses for that. But also, I don't want to go into in a way of training where it's going to be damaging the joint system or things like this. And that's going to come up more if I'm going to a lot of speed, a lot of power, a lot of repetitions. So it's the old kind of quality over quantity kind of thing. And then with that, just start to maybe switch it up into Zengo. Again, with that same kind of feeling, the danger now is more obviously because you go into Zengo and you go like 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes again. It goes back into a kind of, and again, I get caught out by the repetitions before. But again, just think that each time it's like one cut. We've got this in a lot. If you think about Gono Ase as an exercise, you know, you're dealing with the yokomen, tends to be done in like a 4 count, like a 1, 2, 3, 4. And in terms of the actual exercise, it's just kind of one cut being done 4 times. But it's something that gets lost in repetitious practice, or what looks like repetitious practice. Yeah, great. And then once you're that, just play with any of the suburi. So you know all the 7, or you could do any kind of variations on them that you like. The 7 are kind of enough in a sense. I would probably whittle them down, maybe just to 3, but showing the essential movements, just start to maybe play around with them a little bit. And again, get the sensation, particularly with ones like 4, 5, 6, 7, they're very going into again this danger of kind of repetitious work. So just feel that every cut again is really completed, and the transition into the cut is really full. So just goes back to this idea of doing just one cut each time. Same with again, like archery is the same. The Japanese phrase for this is ichigo ichi, ichi, which would be like a one time, one meeting, or one chance. And that would be like, they would say like savor that, it comes from the archery tradition, they would say like savor the shot, because it might be the last time you do it, it might be the only time. So yeah, really good. All right. And then again, when you're doing these things, let's go, if you go into like a very basic pattern, which will maybe like a 5th suburi, done in a kind of fluid way. Think about, again, I'm going to kind of treat it as if it's one thing happening. So obviously you've got the problem of there's kind of a beat within the movement, and the tendency would be to kind of pause and stop, obviously, and kind of, that's fine to do, maybe play with that. But if I'm playing with, again, maybe more of a fluid form, just start to see it as kind of one thing. So the movement starts to kind of melt into one thing, but again, it becomes then an extension that will become, it becomes one kind of motion through the set. Same like the difficult way you would do this is train like the 31 Drakatarapsi and do it and see it as kind of one thing being done. And we tend to then chunk things, like obviously 31 katas chunked into pieces, and then we learn it that way, and then but if you see these in this case, start to see it as one thing, goals coming together at the same time. Very good, great. Okay, cool. And then last comment, just play with any combination really. So you could do you could do any kind of setup with it. Just play with it again, maybe a bit more of a continuous feeling. When you feel the body kind of naturally come to a stop, or you just want to stop, just pause and then find another kind of set. So the key thing then will be again the kind of stillness aspect of it, and then going into movement. And if you look at it in terms of patterning or kata work, then there's going to be kind of a kind of natural think of in terms of like a bell curve. There's like a lead in, there's the action, and then there's a kind of lead out. And I want to kind of notice that, be kind of sensitive to it. Obviously, again, we kind of do things like we do it in a 6-count kata, and that's it. Again, I'm kind of following, listening to the body, and I'm creating a set maybe for myself. Let's just being aware of these kind of maybe dips in attention come into it, but just in terms of a kind of completion of the movement. Nice, very nice. And last 30 seconds or so, just put a little bit more kind of power into it. So just a little bit, and you could also put a little bit of speed into it, but just really start to kind of complete the cuts now. So don't do anything too strenuous. And it might just be kind of coming back to one cut, but just feel that it's now done as a kind of full cut, full kind of feeling behind it. So with this kind of training, again, you don't really need to do a lot of this if I kind of built up to it, and then let the body kind of go. Let go and let go of the car. Maybe just letting the body go, really. Nice. Good. Great. And then last thing, just feel myself to kind of come back maybe to the middle of the room. Just again, just really set the shoulders a little bit, maybe really set the knees. Start to take the soul to the side. Shake out the body a little bit, shake out the arms if you need to. And just think about kind of again releasing weight down and then lengthening it through the body maybe a little bit. Checking with the body a little bit. Good. Okay, okay. We will stop for a bit. You did. Great. どうもありがとうございます。
どうもありがとうございました。
All right. Good. Thank you very much. It's Friday, right? Doesn't
Yep.
feel like Friday, but it is.
Friday.